Thanks for tuning into the Urban Scope podcast. I'm back talking about more hip hop mysteries and hip hop, just things in hip hop that we just can't really don't have an answer for, but we have an answer for them, but for some reason they were never solved when the problem existed. So, a major artist in 2015, Fetty Wap, everybody knew Fetty Wap. He released a plethora of hits and he put all these hits on one album, and the album went 2 times platinum. The single that released Trap Queen, we know that single went diamond. Everyone was hooked on this song, whether you were black, white, Hispanic, Asian, whatever. Whatever your classical music choice was, this you couldn't escape this song because it was just that catchy. It was a great song and it had a great theme to it. Regardless of what the subject matter was, people were still singing it whether they knew what the song meant or not. It was just that catchy. But from all the singles that released on that album, he released three other singles from that album and they went 12 times platinum to get, all together when you add all the sales up. So he was very successful, but for some reason or reasons I'll be able to tell you in a little bit, that was the end of his run. And he took a hiatus for whatever reason after that first album in 2015 and didn't release another one until 2021. Now he came back in 2023 and released another album, but both projects didn't even chart. So most people are wondering, if your first album was so successful, went 2 times platinum, you had a diamond single, which few artists have ever done in musical history. Why didn't your second and third projects didn't chart? Maybe it's because of the hiatus, or maybe it's just because of the team that's around you. Now there are reports that said he dealt with financial issues and financial mismanagement and personal issues as well that led to his musical decline after that first album was released. And he talked about making $100,000 a day, and he knew he fell off when he only made 40,000. He started to make $40,000 a day, and his rumored expenses a month was $150,000 a month. So it kind of shows you like the math was off. The math wasn't mathing, as they say. But a lot of this was due to bad management or his financial issues and just having bad players around you. And I talked about this on different sections on segments about not having that strong team around you and how that can affect you, especially when you're young. He was around 23, 24 years old. So when you give all this money to a 23, 24-year old, of course the label is not going to put people in place for you to succeed. Of course the label is not going to be that invested in you because of course they want to make more money when you make more money, but at the same time, when you stop making money, they're still making money off your catalog and things like that. If you run out of money, you just ran out. They still have their portion and they still will be bringing in, the royalties because you don't own the music, because you don't own your brand, you don't own your likeness and names and things like that. So they still going to make money off of it. So a lot of this, it's just coming back to your team and having people around you and having somebody in your corner, whether it be family or friends, telling you, hey man, we need to slow down on this money. Let's figure out something else. Let's get an accountant. Let's get a lawyer. Let's figure things out. But people are going to want to spend money. People are going to want to get favors from you, things like that. So that can all bring you around. And that seems like that's what happened with the situation with Fetty Wap, and especially with his incarceration now. And I believe he's not out for, several years. So hopefully when he gets out, he'll find a better team to place himself around to be able to have success because he obviously had the talent. It was just about him being able to have peace, but it seemed like he didn't have peace. And we've seen, and it's kind of sad to see that in the era where we've seen people before him go through this situation, and we would think people would have security blankets in place for this type of situations. We've seen people like Mike Tyson lose it all, MC Hammer, and other celebrities that were on top of the world, but they passed out so much money and had so many expenses that expenses outweigh their finances, and that's a recipe for disaster. If anybody knows that. Um, and also the money's not going to come in the same way that you first got it. So Fetty Wap should have known once he was making $100,000 a day, it wasn't going to keep coming in like that. He would have to, work himself up to that. There's going to be a drop off, and then you're going to have to find a way to build it back up because unless you have 20 other trap queens in your pocket, the money's not going to keep coming like that. So he should have had a plan for that as well. And that's it's a sad story because being ultra talented and the sound that he built upon that sounded like Future a little bit, but 2.0, you would think that he would have had the team around him or just someone around him just to talk about these type of situations. And artists and athletes, for example, shouldn't have to face this today. I know the NBA and I think the NFL to some degree has programs for their incoming rookies to be able to have financial, education, to have these classes talking about your finances and how much to spend and taxes and things like that. Because a lot of artists are young or athletes are young when they come in and they don't know, you know, the different about taxes and things like that. Some of these athletes never had real jobs. So they don't know about how to pay taxes and things like that, how to hire an accountant, lawyers, et cetera. So it's important to have those financial literacy classes and have that educational piece when you're dealing with athletes and artists who probably never had real jobs in their lives or never had someone around them to support them like that. But the music industry, should implement those classes, but it's a predatory game similar to, the sports industry. These industries will move on without you and they've moved before you. So they are not heavily invested in you unless you're like a Taylor Swift or a Drake to some degree, or, even one of these legendary acts like a Mariah Carey or something like that. Now, if you're one of these, one of the average artists amongst the rest who has a hit or two, they'll put a little investment into your videos and things like that. But as far as like your personal development, things like that, like accountants, lawyers, and just having just common sense, they won't invest in that because they're still making their money. But it's sad to see his story, and hopefully, like I said before, when he gets out, he'll have a better team around him and make better decisions because he's ultra talented, and hopefully he can get back to where he once was and get his name back into good graces, inside the industry. So thanks for tuning into the Urban Scope podcast. Until next time, I'll see you next time.